The tremor in Admiral Castellano's hand was so slight that most people wouldn't have noticed. But I'd spent 15 years learning to read body language in high-stakes situations, interrogations, hostage negotiations, combat zones where a twitch could mean the difference between life and death. So when his fingers curled reflexively around the gold band on his left hand, when his pupils dilated just enough to betray shock, I knew. I knew before he spoke. Before he whispered my father's name like a prayer he'd been too afraid to say aloud. "Lieutenant Commander Reeves," he said, and his voice, the voice that had commanded carrier strike groups, that had briefed presidents, cracked like thin ice under pressure. "We need to talk. Now, not here." The corridor of Building 7 at Naval Station Portland felt suddenly airless. Fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous song. Somewhere down the hall, boots clicked in perfect rhythm, Marines changing shift, oblivious to the seismic shift happening in this narrow stretch of polished linoleum. I'd been on my way to a routine debrief. Post-deployment paperwork, the kind of administrative tedium that made you forget, temporarily, what it felt like to operate in the dark with nothing but trust and training keeping you alive. I wasn't supposed to cross paths with a 4-star admiral. He wasn't supposed to be here at all. But there he was. And there, on his hand, was the ring. My father's ring. Not similar. Not close. The exact ring, custom-forged titanium with an engraved anchor and compass rose, the numbers 34 degrees north, 118 degrees west etched on the inner band. Coordinates I'd memorized as a child, coordinates that marked the place where my father grew up, where he'd taught me to sail, where he'd told me stories about honor and duty and the kind of man I should aspire to be. The ring they told me had been lost in the accident. The ring that should have been buried with him, or given to me, or sitting in some evidence locker tagged and forgotten. Not on the hand of Admiral Vincent Castellano. "Sir," I managed, though my throat felt lined with sand. "That ring. Not here." His eyes darted left, right, cataloging exits and witnesses with the paranoia of a man who'd lived through things that taught him to trust no one. "My vehicle. 5 minutes. East parking lot." He walked away before I could respond, his aide trailing behind with a leather portfolio and the kind of blank expression aides cultivated when their bosses were falling apart in public. I stood there, rooted, as sailors and officers flowed around me. Someone said my name. I didn't respond. My pulse hammered against my ribs like it wanted out. 2 years. 2 years since the Virginia State Police knocked on my apartment door at 3 in the morning. 2 years since they told me Senior Chief Gabriel Reeves, my father, my hero, the man who'd raised me alone after my mother died, had driven his truck off Route 29 into a ravine. Single vehicle accident. No other cars involved. Clear night. Straight road. No explanation. They'd recovered his body. They hadn't recovered the ring. And I'd spent 2 years telling myself it didn't matter, that grief was irrational, that needing his ring back was just my mind grasping for closure where there was none. I'd thrown myself into work, counter-terrorism operations in East Africa, training evolutions in the Arctic, anything to keep moving, keep breathing, keep pretending the hole in my chest wasn't slowly hollowing me out. But now, standing in a government hallway that smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee, I felt something I hadn't felt since the funeral: rage. Clear, focused, clarifying rage. The parking lot was nearly empty at 1400 hours on a Tuesday. Most personnel were at afternoon briefings or PT. The Admiral's black Suburban sat alone near the perimeter fence, engine idling, windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever waited inside. I approached slowly, scanning for surveillance, for witnesses, for anything that felt wrong. Old habits. The rear door opened before I reached it. "Get in," Castellano said from the shadows. I climbed in. The door shut with a heavy thunk, sealing us in leather-scented silence. The driver, a stone-faced petty officer with the kind of jawline that suggested he'd been a boxer, didn't turn around. The Admiral looked older up close. Late 50s, maybe 60, with gray threading through dark hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. He wore his service dress blues without a single ribbon out of place, but his hands trembled as he set his cover on the seat between us. "Your father," he said quietly, staring at the ring he'd removed from his finger, "was Gabriel Reeves. Senior Chief. Served 26 years. Died 2 years ago in what they called an accident." I nodded, not trusting my voice. He turned the ring slowly, light glinting off the engraved surface. "This ring was made by a jeweler in Norfolk. Custom order. Only 2 were ever created. Identical, except for the initials inside the band." He held it up so I could see the inscription, Gar Gabriel Alexander Reeves. "How?" It came out as a rasp. I cleared my throat, tried again. "How did you get it?" Admiral Castellano closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. I pulled it off his hand, he said. The night he died, before anyone else arrived at the scene. The world tilted. You were there? 30 minutes after it happened. I got a call, unofficial, from someone who owed me a favor in the state police. By the time I arrived, the truck was still smoking at the bottom of the ravine. Your father was. He stopped, swallowed hard. He was gone, but I climbed down anyway. And I took the ring, because I knew, if I didn't, it would disappear. You stole evidence from a death scene. Yes, no hesitation, no excuse, because I suspected, even then, that what happened to your father wasn't an accident. And I was terrified that if the ring ended up in the wrong hands, you'd never see it again. My breath came short and fast. Who are the wrong hands? Castellano looked at me with an expression I'd seen before, on the faces of men about to confess sins they'd carried too long. The people who killed him, he said. The Admiral told me to call him Vincent. Not sir, not Admiral, Vincent, as if rank dissolved in the presence of certain truths. We drove for 20 minutes in silence, the petty officer navigating back roads until we reached a small house tucked into the pines outside base limits, a place, Vincent explained, that technically didn't exist in any official records. A safe house, though he didn't call it that. Inside, the walls were bare except for a single photograph. Two young men in desert camouflage, faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion, arms slung around each other's shoulders. One of them was unmistakably Vincent Castellano, younger by decades, grinning despite the blood dried on his temple. The other was my father. I stopped breathing. Somalia, 1993, Vincent said quietly, standing beside me. We weren't supposed to be there. Officially, the Navy had no presence in that sector. Unofficially, he trailed off, staring at the photo like it was a window into another life. Your father saved my life that day. He never talked about Somalia. No, he wouldn't have. Vincent moved to a small kitchen table, motioning for me to sit. I did, though every muscle in my body wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but sit still while the foundation of my grief cracked open. We were part of a joint task force, SEAL, Delta, CIA contractors. Intelligence suggested a warlord was stockpiling weapons provided by foreign actors. Our job was to confirm and extract. He poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher, slid one across to me. It went bad fast. Ambush 3 blocks from the target building. I took shrapnel to the leg, couldn't move. Your father, he was the junior man, the least experienced operator on the team, he could have left me. Should have left me. Instead, he dragged me into a burned-out shop, patched the wound with a torn shirt, and held off hostiles for 40 minutes until exfil arrived. I sipped the water. It tasted like metal. Afterward, when we were stateside recovering, we had these rings made. A private thing. No ceremony, no official recognition. Just 2 men who understood what it meant to trust someone with your life. He reached across the table, placed the ring in front of me. He wore his every day. I wore mine. A reminder that honor isn't about medals or promotions. It's about the choices you make when no one's watching. I picked up the ring, feeling the weight of it, the warmth from Vincent's hand still lingering in the metal. Why didn't you tell me? My voice barely rose above a whisper. After he died, why didn't you come to me then? Shame flickered across his face. Because I convinced myself I was wrong. That I was seeing conspiracy where there was only tragedy. Your father and I, we hadn't spoken in months before he died. We'd had a falling out. He hesitated. Over you. My head snapped up. Over me? He came to me 6 months before the accident. Said he'd stumbled onto something, contract fraud, equipment failures, falsified reports. He wanted my help navigating the bureaucracy, getting an investigation open through proper channels. Vincent's jaw tightened. I told him to drop it. Told him he was risking his career, risking your career by association. He was close to retirement. You were moving up fast. I thought I was protecting both of you. But he didn't drop it. No, Gabriel Reeves didn't know how to walk away from injustice. Vincent's voice cracked. And I didn't know how to protect him from the consequences. For the next hour, Vincent laid it out. The trail my father had followed. The defense contractor, Northgard Solutions, that supplied gear to multiple Navy installations. The pattern of equipment failures that should have triggered red flags but somehow never did. Radios that died mid-operation. Body armor with faulty plates. Parachutes that deployed with torn canopies. Your father started quietly, Vincent explained, spreading documents across the table. Talked to supply chiefs, maintenance crews. Documented serial numbers. Built a timeline. He tapped a page filled with my father's handwriting, neat, methodical, damning. He found purchase orders for new equipment that was clearly refurbished. Test certifications signed by inspectors who didn't exist. Payments processed through shell companies. How much money are we talking about? Millions. Maybe tens of millions over a decade. I felt sick. He brought this to you? Eventually. But by then, Vincent rubbed his face. By then, someone had already gotten to him. He told me they'd made veiled threats. Nothing direct, they were too smart for that. But implications. Your promotion board was coming up. Your security clearance renewal. Suddenly, there were whispers that maybe Gabriel Reeves wasn't as stable as he seemed. That maybe he was seeing problems where there weren't any. That maybe his daughter's rise through the ranks had been expedited. Rage, white-hot and clarifying, flooded my veins. They threatened to ruin my career if he didn't back off. Yes, and you told him to let it go. Vincent met my eyes. To my eternal shame, yes. I thought I was being pragmatic. I thought, his voice broke. I thought I was protecting you both. Instead, I abandoned the best man I ever knew. Silence filled the small house, broken only by the ticking of a wall clock and the distant sound of wind through pines. He didn't let it go, I said finally. No, he confronted them directly, set up a meeting with Northgard's regional director, a man named Marcus Drummond. This was 3 days before the accident. Vincent pulled out another document, a printed email, my father's name in the sender field. He told them he was filing a formal complaint with the Inspector General. Gave them one last chance to come clean voluntarily. And 3 days later, his truck went off the road. On a clear night, straight highway, no skid marks, no mechanical failure found, though the vehicle was too damaged for a thorough analysis. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. The Virginia State Police closed the case in 2 weeks. Ruled it an accident, driver error, likely fatigue. My father didn't make errors. I know, and you think, what? That they ran him off the road? Vincent looked at me with eyes that had seen too much, lived too long carrying too many secrets. I think your father was murdered, he said quietly. And I think I let it happen because I was too much of a coward to stand with him when it mattered. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my small base apartment, 2 rooms, government-issue furniture, walls bare because I'd never bothered decorating, and read every document Vincent had given me. Reports, emails, photographs of damaged equipment, testimony from sailors who'd filed complaints that went nowhere. My father's handwriting filled the margins. Notes in blue ink, questions circled, names underlined. His process was methodical, patient, the work of a man who understood that truth required evidence, not just conviction. One page stopped me cold. A timeline, dated 3 months before his death, March 14th, spoke with Chief Warrant Officer Mills radio failures during training op. Mills nervous, wouldn't go on record. March 19th, contacted Northgard directly. Representative M. Drummond, dismissive, suggested I was misunderstanding normal supply chain variations. March 27th, anonymous email to my personal account. Subject line: think about Mira. No other text. IP trace unsuccessful. Mira, my name. They'd threatened me directly. My hands shook as I kept reading. April 2nd, second anonymous message. Attached photo of me leaving SEAL headquarters in Coronado. Caption: bright future ahead. Would hate to see it derailed. He'd never told me, never let me see the fear he must have felt. He'd carried it alone, protecting me the way he always had, even when it cost him everything. The final entry was dated 2 days before he died. Meeting with Drummond, 1600, Richmond. Bringing recorder. If something happens, everything's with VC. Tell Mira I'm proud. Tell her to finish it. VC Vincent Castellano. Tell Mira to finish it. I closed the folder, pressing my palms against my eyes until I saw stars. Grief and rage tangled together, indistinguishable, overwhelming. Finish it. At 0600, I met Vincent at the safe house again. This time, he wasn't alone. The woman sitting across from him was maybe 45, slight build, dark hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. She wore civilian clothes, slacks, a blazer, but carried herself with the careful stillness of someone who'd learned not to draw attention. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, Vincent said, this is Rebecca Lansing. She was an accountant for Northgard Solutions. Was. Past tense. I quit 3 weeks ago, Rebecca said, her voice low and precise. Before I became a liability they needed to eliminate. I sat slowly. You think they'd kill you? I think they killed your father. She slid a flash drive across the table. And I have proof. The files on the drive were damning. Invoices showing Northgard billing for new equipment while delivering refurbished stock. Test reports with forged signatures. Email chains discussing how to manage inspectors and redirect complaints. And payments. Hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing to offshore accounts linked to government officials. Your father wasn't the first person to notice, Rebecca explained. But he was the most persistent. Most people who raised questions got transferred or reassigned. A few got bought off, promotions, cushy post-retirement contracts. Your father couldn't be moved or bought. So they killed him. They made it look like an accident. Just like they did with the others. I froze. Others? Rebecca pulled up another file. Names and dates. Lieutenant Commander James Park. Single vehicle accident, November 2019. Chief Petty Officer Sandra Yee. House fire, March 2020. Civilian Inspector Harold Voss. Heart attack, June 2020. All of them were investigating Northgard, Rebecca said quietly. All of them died within weeks of filing formal complaints. Vincent's face had gone gray. Jesus Christ. There's more. Rebecca's hands trembled as she opened another folder. The meeting your father had with Marcus Drummond 3 days before he died, it was recorded. Not by your father. By Drummond. She pulled up a video file. The footage was grainy, clearly from a hidden camera. My father sat across a desk from a man in an expensive suit, Drummond, presumably. The audio was muffled but audible. I'm filing the complaint tomorrow, my father said, calm and steady. I'm giving you the chance to come forward voluntarily. Cooperate with the investigation and maybe, you avoid criminal charges. Drummond leaned back, smiling. Chief Reeves. Gabriel. Can I call you Gabriel? No, you're making a mistake. A big one. You have a daughter, don't you? Lieutenant Commander Mira Reeves. Impressive career. It would be a shame if questions started circulating about how she advanced so quickly. Nepotism. Favoritism. You know how it is. Once people start talking, the stain never quite washes out. My father's expression didn't change. You're threatening my daughter. I'm protecting my business interests. And suggesting you do the same for your family. I'm done here. My father stood. Think carefully, Chief. Accidents happen. Careers end. People get hurt. Drummond's smile never wavered. You're a smart man. Make the smart choice. My father walked out without another word. The video ended. Rebecca closed the laptop. Drummond called someone right after your father left. I tracked the number. It belongs to a man named Vincent Shaw, former Force Recon, now private security. He specializes in problem resolution. You mean he's a cleaner, I said, my voice hollow. Yes. Vincent's fists clenched on the table. Do we know where Shaw is now? Last known address is in Maryland. But he moves around, uses aliases. Rebecca hesitated. There's one more thing. The state trooper who investigated your father's accident, Officer Dale Henriksen, he received a $50,000 deposit in his personal account 2 weeks later. Offshore wire transfer. They paid him to close the case. They paid him to make sure no one looked too closely. Vincent spent the next 3 days calling in every favor he'd accumulated over 3 decades in the Navy. Back-channel conversations with the Inspector General's office. Quiet meetings with JAG officers he trusted. Carefully worded requests to NCIS for case file reviews. I spent those days learning to live with rage. Not the hot, explosive kind that burned out fast. The cold, patient kind that settled in my bones and stayed there, sharpening my focus, clarifying my purpose. My father had taught me that. Anger is a tool, he'd said once, after I'd come home from high school in tears because some boy had spread rumors about me. You can let it control you, or you can control it. Channel it. Use it to build something better than whatever they tried to tear down. I was going to build his vindication. On the 4th day, Vincent called me to a conference room in the IG's building, a windowless space with sound-dampening panels and a security lock that required fingerprint clearance. Inside, 3 people waited, a Navy JAG captain named Torres, an NCIS special agent named Chen, and a civilian from the Department of Justice named Morrison. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, Torres said, gesturing to a seat. We've reviewed the materials Admiral Castellano provided. We have questions. For 2 hours, they questioned everything. My father's timeline, Rebecca Lansing's credibility, the authenticity of the documents, the chain of custody for evidence. I answered every question with precision, never wavering, never letting emotion bleed into my voice. Finally, Chen leaned back. This is substantial. If even half of this holds up, we're looking at conspiracy, fraud, bribery, and possibly multiple homicides. It's going to hold up, I said. Morrison studied me. You understand that opening an investigation of this magnitude will put a target on your back. These people have resources, connections. They've already killed to protect their operation. Then I'll be careful. Careful might not be enough. I met his eyes. My father didn't have the choice to be careful. He had the choice to do what was right or walk away. He chose right, and it got him killed. I'm making the same choice. Torres nodded slowly. Then we're opening a formal investigation. Full scope. We'll need your cooperation as a witness, and your silence. No one outside this room can know what we're doing until we're ready to move. Understood. Chen stood, extending a hand. Your father would be proud. I shook it. He'd say I'm just finishing the job. The investigation took 8 months. 8 months of surveillance, subpoenas, forensic accounting, and witness interviews. 8 months of watching Rebecca Lansing disappear into witness protection. 8 months of learning that Officer Henriksen had been found dead in his garage, apparent suicide, 3 weeks after we started asking questions. Another accident. Another body. Vincent barely slept. I watched him age a decade in those months, the weight of guilt and responsibility carving deeper lines into his face. I should have acted sooner, he said one night, sitting in his office with a glass of whiskey he wasn't drinking. Your father came to me. I had the power to help him. And I did nothing. You're helping now. It doesn't undo what I failed to do. No, I agreed, but it's what he would have wanted. He didn't give up on the truth. Neither can we. In March, 2 years and 4 months after my father's death, NCIS arrested Marcus Drummond at his home in Alexandria. Simultaneous raids hit Northgard offices in 7 states. Accounts were frozen, servers seized, executives taken into custody. Vincent Shaw, the cleaner, was found in a motel in Baltimore. He fought back. The SWAT team put 3 rounds in him before he went down. He survived, barely, and eventually, facing life in prison, he talked. He confessed to 4 murders, including my father's. I ran his truck off the road, Shaw said in a recorded interview I watched later, in a conference room with Torres and Chen. His voice was flat, mechanical, devoid of remorse. Waited for him on Route 29. High-speed pit maneuver, followed through until the vehicle went over the embankment. He was dead before the truck stopped rolling. Clean job. Torres paused the video. That's enough. But I shook my head. Play the rest. Chen hesitated, then pressed play. Any regrets? The interviewer asked Shaw. He shrugged. It's work. I got paid. He knew the risks. He was a decorated service member. He was in the way. I stood, walked out, and vomited in the hallway bathroom. The trial was a media spectacle. Defense contractors, military corruption, assassination, it had everything the news cycle craved. I avoided reporters, declined interviews, focused on the only thing that mattered, ensuring the truth came out in a courtroom where lies couldn't hide. I testified for 3 days. The defense attorney tried to rattle me, suggesting my father had been paranoid, unstable, that his conspiracy theories had driven him to reckless behavior. I stayed calm. My father was many things, I said, looking directly at the jury. But paranoid wasn't one of them. He was methodical, patient. He built his case piece by piece because he knew the people he was exposing would do exactly what they're doing now, try to destroy his credibility after he was no longer here to defend himself. The attorney tried again. Isn't it possible your grief has colored your perception of events? My grief is irrelevant. The evidence speaks for itself. And it did. Rebecca Lansing's testimony, the financial records, the video of Drummond threatening my father, Shaw's confession, Officer Henriksen's offshore payments. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus Drummond got 25 years. Vincent Shaw got life without parole. 3 Northgard executives got sentences ranging from 10 to 18 years. Officer Henriksen's estate was sued into oblivion, his pension stripped, his name disgraced. When the verdict was read, Vincent was sitting beside me in the gallery. His hand found mine. Neither of us said anything. There wasn't anything to say. A week after the trial ended, the Navy held a ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. A formal recognition of my father's service and sacrifice. The Secretary of the Navy spoke. The Chief of Naval Operations spoke. Vincent spoke. Senior Chief Gabriel Reeves, Vincent said, standing at the podium in his dress whites, voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face, was a better man than I deserved as a friend. He saved my life once in Somalia. And when I had the chance to save his, I failed him. He paused, composing himself. But his daughter didn't fail. She honored his memory by finishing what he started. She proved that truth, no matter how deeply buried, can be brought to light. And she reminded all of us that honor isn't about perfection. It's about standing up even when you're terrified, even when you're alone, even when the cost is everything. He looked directly at me. Gabriel, wherever you are, your daughter made you proud. I hope, someday, I can say the same. After the ceremony, I walked alone to my father's grave. The stone was simple: his name, his rank, his dates, and a single line I'd chosen. He stood for truth. I knelt, placing the ring, his ring, on the grass in front of the headstone. I finished it, Dad, I whispered. It's done. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the scent of cherry blossoms and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere nearby, a bugler played taps. I stayed there until the sun set, watching shadows lengthen across row after row of white marble. The coffee shop in Annapolis is small, tucked between a bookstore and a law office, the kind of place where locals read the paper and college students nurse lattes over thick textbooks. I sit by the window, watching sailboats drift across the bay, their white sails catching late afternoon sun. My phone buzzes. A text from Vincent, running 5 minutes late. Traffic on the bridge. I smile. Some things never change. 5 years since the trial. 5 years since I testified, since justice, imperfect, incomplete, but real, was served. The Navy promoted me to commander 3 years ago. I spent 2 years at the Pentagon working policy reform, ensuring the kind of corruption my father exposed couldn't take root again. Now I'm teaching at the Naval Academy, shaping the next generation of officers, making sure they understand that honor isn't abstract, it's a choice you make every single day. Vincent retired 6 months after the trial. The guilt never fully left him, but he's found ways to carry it. He volunteers with veteran organizations, mentors young officers, and every year on the anniversary of my father's death, he visits Arlington alone. Last year, he published a memoir, Brotherhood and Betrayal, A Life in Service. The dedication reads, "For Gabriel Reeves, who taught me what honor really means." It's a bestseller. Rebecca Lansing is still in witness protection somewhere, but she sends me Christmas cards. Last year's had a photo of her with a dog, smiling in front of a mountain range I didn't recognize. No return address, but the message was clear: she'd found peace. Vincent Shaw died in prison 2 years ago. Stabbed by another inmate. I didn't mourn. Marcus Drummond filed 3 appeals. All denied. He'll die behind bars. I wear my father's ring on a chain around my neck. Every day. Through briefings and ceremonies, through lectures and PT, through quiet mornings and restless nights. It rests over my heart, warm and solid, a reminder of the man who taught me that integrity isn't what you do when people are watching, it's who you are when they're not. The bell over the door chimes. Vincent walks in, older now, grayer, but standing straighter than he has in years. He sees me, smiles, and makes his way through the crowded shop. "Commander Reeves," he says, sitting down across from me. "Or should I start calling you Professor?" Mira is fine. He orders tea. He quit coffee 3 years ago, something about acid reflux, and we sit in comfortable silence for a moment. "How's the semester?" he asks. "Good." The midshipmen are sharp, eager, a little naive, but that's part of the job, teaching them that the real world is messier than they imagine. "Are you teaching them about your father?" "Not directly, but I tell them stories about integrity. About whistleblowers who paid the price for doing the right thing. About the importance of standing up even when it's hard." I touch the ring under my blouse. I don't use his name. But his story is there, in every lesson. Vincent nods. He'd like that. We talk for an hour, about his book tour, about my latest research project, about mutual friends and shared memories. It's easy now, the way it wasn't for years. The guilt still lives in him, but it doesn't consume him anymore. As we're leaving, he pauses outside the shop, looking out at the water. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" he asks quietly. "The cost, I mean. What your father lost. What you had to go through." I follow his gaze to the bay, where the sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "He knew the cost," I say. "He chose it anyway, not because he wanted to die, but because he couldn't live with himself if he stayed silent. And yeah, it was worth it. Because now when sailors deploy, they know their gear won't fail them. Now when officers see corruption, they know they can report it. Now when someone tries to bury the truth, they know someone will dig it up." Vincent smiles, tired but genuine. "You sound like him." "Good." We part ways in the parking lot. He drives north, back to his condo in Baltimore. I drive south, toward the base where I'll teach tomorrow's class on ethics and leadership. But first, I make a detour. Arlington is quiet at dusk, the rows of marble headstones glowing pale in the fading light. I park near Section 60, where newer graves cluster, and walk the familiar path to my father's resting place. The grass is neatly trimmed. A small American flag flutters beside the stone. Someone, a stranger maybe, left it there. People do that for veterans. Silent thanks from a grateful nation. I kneel, brushing dust from the engraved letters of his name. Hey, Dad, I say softly. It's been a good week. The midshipmen are learning. Vincent's doing better. The reforms are holding. I pause, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. I hope you're proud. I hope you know I kept my promise. The wind picks up, rustling through the trees, carrying the distant sound of taps from another service somewhere across the cemetery. I stay until full dark, until the stars come out and the security lights click on along the pathways. Before I leave, I touch the ring around my neck one more time. I love you, I whisper. Thank you for teaching me what honor really means. Then I stand, brush the grass from my knees, and walk back to my car. Behind me, the cemetery settles into quiet vigil, row after row of men and women who served, who sacrificed, who stood for something bigger than themselves. My father among them, forever remembered, forever honored, forever loved.